Good morning. Today is the fifth. It's the fifth day of Kislev of Tevet, and the 17th day of December. And we're starting a new parsha, Parashat Vayigash. Vayigash literally means he approached. And who approached? Judah now approaches Joseph. And we said that the saga is continuing with Judah and the rest of his brothers now finally recognizing the importance of Joseph's mission. They don't yet know that it's Joseph, but they begin to understand that you probably can't get along in the world if you just stay locked into your shepherding work. And though this is a very important endeavor, there is also room for those who stay, who don't remain at home and who go out and engage the world and want to continue Abraham's mission of changing the world. And it's very interesting that this approach of Judah to Joseph, how do we see it exactly? So clearly the first thing that comes to mind, and this is what the Haftarah, the selection from the prophets for this week is about, it's from the book of Ezekiel, and it deals with the reunification of the house of Joseph, or the tree of Joseph as it's called, the branch of Joseph, and the branch of Judah at the end of time. And what is all that about? Well, we know that after the first temple was built, only 26 years after the first temple was built, I always mention this number, it's very interesting that 26 years after the first temple was built, the kingdom was torn in two. And it became the northern kingdom, which was mostly ruled by the descendants of Joseph, and the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah as we call it, and with Judah were the tribe of Levi, most of the Levites, because they worked in the temple, and the tribe of Benjamin, and apparently some of the tribe of Shimon, who was a little bit landless. They didn't have an inheritance. They were a weak tribe that didn't conquer very much. And this went on for a few hundred years until the Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom. Now, the northern kingdom didn't sit idly by and not have any kind of spiritual life. They did. In fact, they built two temples. One in their central city called Shomron, today we translated as Samaria, and another one in Beit El. And Beit El was the site at which Jacob had seen God twice. And they had two revelations there, and for that reason they connected to those two locations, their capital and the city of Beit El, which is mentioned a couple of times. And they were exiled. And what is the famous exile of the 10 tribes, the 10 northern tribes? Again, 10 and 2 is not exactly the right number. It was very mixed up. It wasn't exactly like demarcated, like these were two completely separate kingdoms. There were times in which guards would stand and not let people go up to the temple in Jerusalem, but all that ended when the Assyrians exiled the northern kingdom. The way the Assyrians worked, the way everybody worked in those times, was that they exiled usually the higher classes, and the lower classes were left where they were. And Jeremiah the prophet is documented as going through the entire land of Israel. He's the last 60 years, last 50 years of the temple in Jerusalem standing, and he went through the whole land of Israel and brought all the stragglers from the 10 tribes back to worship at the temple in Jerusalem. So there was actually, towards the end, before the Babylonians destroyed the temple in Jerusalem, there were about 50 years of unity. But Ezekiel was not talking about that time, because Ezekiel was after that time. Ezekiel saw the destruction of the temple. So he maybe was hinting a little bit to what was going on at the time, but they knew that the people that were joining the southern kingdom now were just leftovers, and the higher classes had been exiled from the northern kingdom, and that was over. So really we understand the prophecy of Ezekiel is one that will happen in the future. Now, there's a very interesting connection between not just in terms of the topic, but also in gematria, in numerical analysis. The phrase Eitz Yosef, the tree or the branch of Joseph, is exactly equal to the phrase Od Yosef bni Chai, still my son Joseph is alive. The very famous words that Jacob says when he hears that Joseph is still alive and he's a viceroy in Egypt. And so there is this very strong connection between what happens in the Torah reading and the selection from the prophets. Now we have to explain what it is like today. What are these two kingdoms today? So it's actually something that Rav Ginsburg has talked about many, many times over the years, that today the Jewish people are divided again in the same manner. There are the tree of Joseph and the tree of Judah. The tree of Judah are those, I'd say it's almost the same division today. Something like 15 to 20% of the people that have retained the commitment to Torah observance or connected to it in some way. Usually more than less, but it varies. The house or the branch of Joseph is those Jews that feel that they need to strike it rich somewhere else. They don't see the value of the Torah. They don't understand its value. They may respect it to some degree as an important part of our tradition, folklore, but they don't see it as a Torah of life. They don't see it as something that can benefit their lives as is today. And this is actually a very new state of affairs. This began sometime around the Enlightenment. So we're talking about 1750s, 1760s. That brought about an emancipation of the Jewish people, and many Jews could leave the ghettos in Europe. Not so much, by the way, in the Arab world, that almost didn't exist. There was very little emancipation. There was always opportunity, but Jews were always treated very differently in the Arab world. And so we see that the split in the Arab world was much less than it was in the European and later American world. So in principle, when you find a Jew whose lineage is from the Arab countries, from the Muslim countries, there are usually more chances that they are than not still traditional, and still, even if they are very versed in the ways of the world, they'll still very much be connected to Judaism. So it's a very strange thing that what held together the house of Judah, or what held together the commitment in most of the world to Judaism, was the inability to come out of the ghettos and be able to participate in the world. And the moment that was released, that barrier, so things changed. And so it was almost like lurking underneath the surface was always this feeling that there is the house of Joseph and the house of Judah, the branch of Joseph, the branch of Judah. And there were always these Jews who wanted to be like Joseph, who wanted to go out, and they usually, the way you'll meet them, is not that they're out to make money. That's certainly one option, but I don't think it's the main option. The main option that they want to do is they want to immerse themselves in the general culture and elevate the general culture. And they usually talk about morals. They usually talk about being more moral than others and elevating the world using that. That's why you find that most of the Jews who are like this will be, for instance, in the United States in the Democratic Party. You won't find them so much in the Republican Party. Simple reason is because they feel, for whatever reason, whether they're right or wrong, that the Democratic Party is more moral. It's more dealing with social issues in the right way and so on. It's progressive, and again, progressive means exactly what it sounds like, that it wants to make progress, but the progress is social progress, the definition of which is that the government needs to move before the population does, before the public does, Otherwise, the public will never move. So you'll find Jews in all kinds of positions of power trying to push society in a certain direction, which they believe is going to lead to more morality. But there's another way to look at this. And this is the way that Rav Ginsburg has been teaching it over the years, that Joseph is more generalized than just saying he wants to immerse himself in general culture. Joseph's idea has always been, and there's a lot to discuss about why this is so, is what we call the unification of human knowledge or mundane knowledge with Torah values. In other words, the Jews that are not so connected to the Torah observance, what they're looking for is to take the values that they think they've acquired at home and to connect them with mundane knowledge, human knowledge. And so this gives us a different perspective on why this happened. It wasn't because of an emancipation, but because of the scientific revolution. The scientific revolution pulled many, many great minds in the Jewish people in the direction of science, and again, mundane knowledge. Sociology is considered to be a science, even though I would argue it's not even close to folklore. It's not even mythology. But that's the way it's looked at. Psychology is looked at as some kind of science. Certainly economy is a type of science, even though you have to go really far to, like, for instance, the Austrian school to really make it into a science, and most everything else is speculation. But there's all these areas of human knowledge that the tree of Joseph is interested in. And so we put Joseph, and Rav Ginsburg explains that he is really the Jews that are involved in Torah and science. And the tree of Judah, the branch of Judah, is the one that's involved. This is interesting. It's not about Judaism. It's not about Torah. It's rather the political side of Judaism. And this is a very interesting thing. What does this political side even mean? Could you say that Zionism, in some sense, is actually connected to the tree of Judah and not to the tree of Joseph? These are a lot of questions that we've dealt with over the years. We don't have time for them now. I'm just raising the issue. And so bringing them together is very interesting, because what happens is that there are many non-Jews in the world that identify with Judaism. They don't identify, usually, they actually don't identify with what we call the political side of Judaism. And what is the political side of Judaism? The political side, when you say political, you really mean polis, you mean the public. The public side of Judaism is not the creation of a state. It's actually something completely different. The political side, the public side of Judaism, is the public worship in the temple in Jerusalem. And so that, you can really tell right away, is not Zionism. That's not connected so much to Zionism. It's connected to people who want to build the third temple. And there's very few non-Jews in the world that associate with that, but there are many, many non-Jews who associate with the knowledge of Torah, with the ability of Torah to inform, to advance, to realign maybe, to spiritualize the sciences, to spiritualize human endeavor. And so these two branches, the way that Rav Ginsburg explains them today, they're like the northern and southern kingdoms. It's not so clear to come to like the land of today, the state of Israel, and say everybody who's traditional is Judah and everybody who's not traditional is connected to Joseph. It's not exactly like that. It's much more generalized under this guise. And so again, Joseph is whoever deals with mundane wisdom, and Judah is whoever deals with the public side of Judaism, which is really the temple. And it's a very interesting thing, because it really needs to be discussed in length why the public side, according to Rav Ginsburg, is not the creation of a state, but rather the creation of a state is only something that might perhaps be connected in some way to the building of the temple. We see today that the biggest opposer to the temple is actually the state of Israel. If it wasn't for the state of Israel, there would probably have been a long time ago some kind of agreement about what happens on the Temple Mount. That hasn't happened because the state of Israel is actually very afraid of it. it won't let anyone worship there. Any Jews are not allowed to worship there, and so on. So there's all this opposition. So this is the coming together of these two branches. You could say almost the personal side, which is what most non-Jews connect to. There's a personal side. They say we're interested in Torah. It gives us something personally. And the public side, Judah, which represents the building of the temple, represents bringing the divine presence back down to earth. So this meeting this week is going to be a lot about this connection between the mundane and the sacred, between the mundane and the heavenly, if you want. And hopefully we'll get a chance to discuss this further during the rest of the week. I wish everyone a good week, a healthy week. It should be full of light and full of good things. Bye-bye.